Hey guys, welcome back to another Top 5 Rundown. This week I'm going to be counting down good movies with bad endings. Starting off at number 5 is The Wolverine. So this is directed by James Mangold and stars obviously Hugh Jackman in his most famous role, the Wolverine. And The Wolverine was a really great solo venture for Wolverine, and it was a huge step up from that garbage X-Men Origins Wolverine that they tried to shove at us a couple years before this. So this movie finds Wolverine lured to a Japan he hasn't seen since World War II, and he finds himself in a shadowy realm of Yakuza and samurai, and he's pushed to his physical and emotional brink when he is forced to go on the run with a powerful industrialist daughter and is confronted for the first time with the prospect of death. As he struggles to rediscover the hero within himself, he must grapple with powerful foes and the ghost of his own haunted past. So anybody that knows the character Wolverine knows that pretty much he can't die. You know, his mutant power is healing. So anytime he's shot, stabbed, burned, anything like that, he heals. He doesn't age. So he's kind of pretty much forced to endure everybody around him that he loves dying before he does. You know, he outlives everybody. And after the end of X-Men The Last Stand, he's haunted by the ghost of Jean Grey. And he keeps having these visions of her and these nightmares of her being around. So he's pretty much off on his own, drifting around, wanting to die. And this guy from his past comes up and gives him a way out, and gives him a way to get rid of his mutant healing. Right after he does that, shit starts to hit the fan. And what really brought a lot more tension and what really brought a lot more stakes to this story is that this is the first time you've ever seen Wolverine in a situation where he won't make it through it. And with the exception of the Viper character, it was a really grounded X-Men story. You know, there wasn't all these off-the-wall villains and all these crazy, world-ending storyline. It was very grounded, and it was very simple. And like I said, it was a huge improvement over what we got for X-Men Origins Wolverine, and it was a really nice, kind of darker, grittier change from the usual X-Men movies, the ones with all the typical X-Men characters, Professor X and all that kind of stuff. And all the way up until like the last 15 minutes, this movie had a great pace going for it. And then this Silver Samurai comes out. So the whole movie where Wolverine's been fighting ninjas and all these, these real threats, now all of a sudden he's fighting a Transformer. And it didn't completely destroy the movie, but it totally kept it from being one of the best X-Men movies out there. I still hold this one up pretty high compared to a few of them, X-Men The Last Stand, and like I said, X-Men Origins Wolverine for sure are the worst. But this movie could have been one of the top 2 or top 3 of this entire franchise if they had just done something a little bit different with that ending. So, number 5 is The Wolverine. Coming in at number 4, Splice. Now, this was like a little sci-fi /horror/thriller movie directed by Vincenzo Natali, and it starred Adrian Brody and Sarah Polley. And it follows geneticists Clive and Elsa, who specialize in creating hybrids of species. And when they propose to use the use of human DNA, their pharmaceutical company bosses forbid it, forcing them to conduct experiments in secret. The result is Dren, a creature with amazing intelligence and physical attributes. At first, Dren exceeds their wildest dreams, but as she begins to grow at an accelerated rate, she threatens to become their worst nightmare. So this is a movie that really got shit on when it came out, and with the exception of the end, it really didn't deserve it, because to me, this is a really cool, different, unique sci-fi movie. And I was really engaged in it for the most part. It was Adrian Brody and Sarah Polley are really good actors, so they did really good in it. And the concept of splicing human DNA with animals and seeing what comes up, it was kind of like a new age Species. And, everybody knows Species, that old campy 90s movie. And so this one really had me up until like the last 15 minutes again. So it does a good balance of being serious and being grounded, but it kind of teeters on the edge of kind of fun campiness, which is a good mix. But as soon as they deal with this thing where one of the animals that they splice about halfway through the movie, changes, and it has this metamorphosis, and it changes genders. And as soon as things like that start happening with Dren, the movie kind of has a metamorphosis, and it's no longer has this grounded, campy feel to it, and then it just really gets silly. And it tries to switch over to a horror movie in the last 15 minutes, and it just does not work. It just doesn't work. And it just kind of, it hits you like a brick in the face whenever you're really grounded and you're really on the ride that the movie's taking you, and then all of a sudden it just kind of switches, and you're not really up for the way that it goes and the direction that it takes you in the last few minutes. So Splice could have been one of those movies where it's one of those kind of cult classic sci-fi movies that people kind of whisper about here and there, but that ending definitely kind of kept it off everybody's radars and kept it from getting the credit that it could have had, because they were onto something there, but just didn't quite nail it. So number 4 was Splice. Number 3, I Am Legend. So this is directed by Francis Lawrence and stars Will Smith, and he's, for the most part, the only actor in the movie. So Will Smith plays Robert Neville, who's a brilliant scientist and a survivor of a man-made plague that transforms humans into bloodthirsty mutants. He wanders alone through New York City, calling out for other possible survivors, and works on finding the cure for the plague using his own immune blood. Neville knows he is badly outnumbered and the odds are against him, and all the while the infected wait for him to make a mistake that will deliver Neville into their hands. So this was Will Smith really proving how awesome of an actor Will Smith is, because one of the hardest things you could possibly do as an actor is carry an entire 90-minute movie by yourself. Every scene has you in it. All the emotional weight is on you. You don't have anybody to bounce off of, nobody to interact with. It's all on you. And Will Smith does an awesome job in this movie at doing that. It's kind of a remake, but not of the Omega Man, the old Charlton Heston movie. I think the Omega Man and I Am Legend are written by the same author, so it might be one of those kind of remake sequel type things, but it's the same idea as the Omega Man. And the CG in the movie doesn't quite hold up today, but at the time it was pretty good. And following Will Smith and this dog that he has, Sam, and seeing the way that he just walks through life with nobody around, and he's playing golf in this desolate, I think it's New York City, and desolate New York City, and he's experimenting at night and just is getting nowhere, and he goes to a movie theater. There's a really kind of gripping scene where he goes to a video store, for those who remember what those are. And he's basically going, he comes in and he's got these mannequins set up. And at first you're kind of laughing, you're like, man, he's got these mannequins set up, that's kind of weird, like trying to pretend that people are there. And then it kind of grips you, and it's kind of haunting that he's got to put statues around to remind himself of what it's like to be inside, in a world with humanity around him. And he has this conversation with this mannequin about the movies that he's about to watch and the movies that he has watched. And the scene has a bookend later on in the movie where he comes back to the video store after something tragic happens, and his whole tone just changes, and it goes from him kind of playfully pretending like life is still there to him just kind of setting in that life and humanity is gone. And the ending totally destroys all of that. The ending that they released in theaters, that is. See, the ending that they released in theaters is just this typical cliche action movie explosion, no weight whatsoever ending. I remember when I was in the theater, I was like, it's one of those endings where you see it and you're like, really? That's it? That's all that we built up to? And the funny thing about this is there's an alternate ending. If you buy the movie on Blu-ray, or on DVD, probably it still has the ending on there, there's an alternate ending. And the alternate ending clearly is the ending that they wrote for the movie. And it's the ending that they shot first. And it is so far superior to whatever moron decided to put that theatrical cut ending in. And it totally, like what I was saying with him just giving up on the thought of humanity. The alternate ending totally drives that motif forward. and it ends the movie in this really good way where it wraps up the story and it all makes sense and it all ties together. And I'm not going to spoil what happens. So, I mean, if you go and get the Blu-ray, I believe you can just watch it with the alternate ending. You don't have to go look at these special features. You can just play it almost like a director's cut. And it's a real shame that I don't know why they decided to change it for the theatrical cut, because almost any review you can find for I Am Legend, and anybody that tells you about I Am Legend, if they say anything negative about it, it's that last 10 minutes. So, I Am Legend is coming in at number 3. Number 2. Law Abiding Citizen. So this movie is directed by F. Gary Gray, and it stars Gerard Butler and Jamie Foxx. And the story is Clyde Shelton, played by Gerard Butler, is an honorable family man until the day that his wife and daughter are murdered in a home invasion. He hopes for justice, but a rising prosecutor named Nick Rice, played by Jamie Foxx, cuts a deal with one of the killers in exchange for testimony. 10 years later, that man is found dead, and Shelton coolly admits his guilt. Then he hands Rice an ultimatum: fix the broken legal system or suffer the consequences. This movie was absolutely awesome when I first saw it. Gerard Butler was still kind of making a name for himself. You know, he had 300 that really put him on the map, but he was still kind of breaking out into that kind of throwback 90s action actor that he is now. And Jamie Foxx is not really an actor that I care much for, but he does pretty good in this. But this movie was a really crazy flip on its head of your typical kind of action thriller setup. Usually you got the good guy, the guy on the right side of the law, and you got the guy on the wrong side of the law, and the whole movie tells you, that other guy is bad, and you're wanting him to get his, and you want the good guy to triumph. And Law Abiding Citizen is the absolute opposite of that. And the way that they have the movie end, it's almost like they didn't intend for that, which is a real shame. Even with the gruesome things that Gerard Butler does in this movie, there's no point where you sympathize with Jamie Foxx more than you sympathize with him. There's no point where you switch saying, okay, I'm no longer on Gerard Butler's side, he's gone too far. Jamie Foxx is suddenly redeemed, and I want him to win. Jamie Foxx is a fucking prick in this movie. Like the synopsis says, basically the guy's wife and daughter was brutally killed. And Jamie Foxx is this new hotshot lawyer, and he just wants to get another win under his belt, basically. He wants to keep his conviction rate. So he cuts a deal to get a quick, easy win instead of actually going for the right thing and going for justice. And Gerard Butler really comes back to bite him in the ass. At no point in the movie do you ever switch over to Jamie Foxx's side and say, okay, this guy was a prick in the beginning, but he's learned his lesson, he's redeemed himself, I'm on his side now, I think he's who I want to triumph in this. And it never gets there. You always want Gerard Butler to come through. He's so smart, and he's so slick, and he's so clever, and he's so sly in the way that he does it, and he's just cool as a cucumber the whole movie, knowing that he's got everybody playing to his tune. And at no point do you abandon that. No point do you're like, okay, this guy's gone too far. And the direction they take the movie, after Jamie Foxx starts to get a leg up on Gerard Butler, from that point on, you're kind of checked out to the movie. You're like, okay, that was the easy, safe way to write it. But a writer that had some balls would have kept with the themes that they were going for. All the statements that the movie makes about, the faults of the justice system and, the justice not being given and all that kind of stuff. It just cripples all that with the way that the ending goes, because, he's meant to punish Jamie Foxx. Jamie Foxx kind of takes on the embodiment of the justice system, and Gerard Butler kind of takes on the embodiment of everybody who's wronged by the justice system. And like I said, since you never really switch, you're never really redeemed by Jamie Foxx, all that statement and all that, all those themes just kind of cripple with the ending. It should have had another twist towards the end. There's a twist that happens in this movie about how Gerard Butler is able to do the things that he is while he's in prison. But there should have been another twist with that. So I'm going to get into a little bit of spoilers for this movie. So if you don't want the movie spoiled, go ahead and fast forward to the next one. But, so at the end, where Jamie Foxx detonates the bomb inside of Gerard Butler's prison cell. And then the movie goes on, Gerard Butler's dead, and then Jamie Foxx goes home to his wife, and, everything's fine, everything's everything's wrapped up in a nice tidy bow, and they go off to their daughter's, cello recital or violin recital. To me, what would have been a really cool ending, and I know this is gruesome because it involves the death of a child, so I get it, but to keep with that craziness and just keeping you guessing with the movie, it would have been cool if they had something along the lines like, okay, Jamie Foxx thinks that he wins, he thinks that the threat's over, the evil's vanquished, and you go home and everybody feels all comfortable, and, oh, okay, the movie's he's gonna wrap up all nice and neat. And he sits down at his daughter's recital, and he's sitting next to his wife, and he does that little smile that he does before the movie cuts to black. Then a certain note gets played on that violin that ignites some kind of a charge inside the violin, and his daughter just explodes. Or the theater explodes, or something along those lines. Something like that. It was gruesome and dark, which I know. But it would have made for a lot ballsier ending. I wish there was an unrated director's cut with this movie that's a lot bloodier, but it keeps the same ending. So I wish there was a director's cut out there that had a better ending, because Law Abiding Citizen, honestly, minus the way that climax kind of goes, it's one of the coolest movies that I've seen. So number 2 is Law Abiding Citizen. Number 1, and I'm probably going to catch some hell for this, No Country for Old Men. Now, this is the Oscar-winning movie by Joel and Ethan Coen, the Coen brothers. And it stars Josh Brolin, Tommy Lee Jones, and Javier Bardem. And the story of the movie, basically, it follows Josh Brolin, who plays Llewellyn Moss, and he finds this grisly aftermath of a drug deal. And he can't resist the cash, left it behind, and he takes it with him. And then the hunter becomes the hunted when a merciless killer named Shigur, played by Javier Bardem, picks up his trail. Also looking for Moss is Sheriff Bell, played by Tommy Lee Jones, an aging lawman who reflects on a changing world and a dark secret of his own as he tries to find and protect Moss. So when this movie came out, everybody was buzzing about it. I hadn't really given any of the Coen brothers movies a watch yet, but they were coming off of Fargo, and everybody was really buzzing about No Country for Old Men when it came out. Got a lot of Oscar buzz, and I believe Javier Bardem won for Best Supporting Actor. And this movie's fucking fantastic. Up until the climax. Javier Bardem is one of the coolest villains and one of the most menacing, threatening villains you're ever going to see in cinema in this movie. And Josh Brolin, even though he's not the best guy and he's not the most, sympathetic character in the world, you're following him the whole movie. He's your protagonist. And the typical path that a story takes is, you have your exposition starting out the movie, which kind of gets you into it. And then you have your rising action. So these are things in the movie that starts ratcheting up the plot, with him finding the money and then Shigur finding out that he's got the money and coming after him and him on the run and all that kind of stuff. Then you have your climax, and that's where all the movie and all the story has its payoff. This movie does not have a climax. It keeps the same ending as the book. This is based off of a book, No Country for Old Men, in which the climax of the story happens completely off camera. So think about the climax of a movie, where all your payoff's going to be and all the ending to your story is, and you don't get to see it. You just get to see all the aftermath of it. No, that's not how it works. And it's one of those things where you have to be really careful when you're adapting something. Whether you're adapting a comic book or a video game or a novel or what say you. What works in one medium doesn't always work in the other. What works in a comic book doesn't always work on the movie screen. What works in a novel doesn't always work in the movie screen. And this is one of those examples where keeping everything exactly the same as the book is not the best way to make the movie. And I don't care who you are, people are going to defend this movie. It's the Coen brothers. People are going to be like, oh, it's just the Coen brothers style, and that's how they do it, and they're just playing with you. And, it's not your typical movie ending. You should watch all the other movies out there that are exactly the same instead of something that's actually unique. No, it's not that it's unique. It's stupid. You stick with one character for a whole movie, and then something happens to him at the end of the story that you don't get to see. You just hear about it afterwards. And that's not how you keep your audience engaged, and that's not how you satisfy your audience, and that's not how you give them any kind of payoff. You have all this tension build up through this movie, waiting for something to come to a head, and you never get it. You're left with Tommy Lee Jones talking about some dreams that he had. And this is not a movie, like I said, this is not something that destroys this movie. It doesn't turn it from a great movie to a dog shit movie, but it really holds it back from being a masterpiece. Because No Country for Old Men, up until that scene, is just awesome. You know, it's dark. The way the directing is great. All the acting is top notch. And like I said, Javier Bardem, I think, won an Oscar for it. And damn if I don't want to see the way that all that played out. It's almost like it's almost like The Sopranos. You know, the infamous Sopranos finale, when everybody's waiting for however many years Soprano was on, 7 or 8 years, for 8 seasons of story to come to its final head and come to its climax, and then the screen just cuts to black. It's kind of like that. So, yeah, that's not good. So, No Country for Old Men is number 1. Alright, guys, that is the end of my Good Movies with Bad Endings episode. So, as always, thank you for listening. Go ahead and like and subscribe. Go ahead and ask whatever questions that you have down below on Facebook or on SoundCloud, and I will answer them in a Q&A episode or at the end of my movie news episodes on Mondays. And I will see you guys next time.